So again, I'm Randall Warnas. I'm a VP of Sales and Marketing for Workhorse on our Aero side, and I'm joined by Kelly Kiger, which we'll do some introductions shortly. Again, before we get started, should be a Q&A section on your dashboard. If you have questions, throw them there. We'll get to those at the end. Generally, we can pound through quite a few questions, but if we don't get to your question for whatever reason, we'll make sure that we send out an email with all the lingering questions to everybody that's on the webinar. This is also recorded, so if you would like to view this later, share it with other folks. It should be, if you click back on your registration link, it should show you the video shortly after, and then we'll send out a link to the recorded version shortly after the presentation. So without further ado, let's talk about Workhorse and what we do. Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself and your time at Workhorse and all of that?
Sure. So hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Kiger. I joined Workhorse about 10 months ago. I've been in the transportation industry for 20 years, most recently selling Mack trucks. So I'm very excited to be in this space now, a little taste of EV from my previous company, and then lots of exciting things to share with you guys today.
Perfect. And I'm Randall Warnas. I've been in the drone industry for almost 10 years. Much of that time being at some of the larger companies in the drone space, DJI for a couple of years. I was at FLIR, the thermal imaging manufacturer, for almost 5 years. Was briefly the CEO of Autel Robotics, and then have been jumping around with different drone initiatives over the last few years. But been at Workhorse for a very short amount of time. I think this is day like 80 for me. But happy to be in a space in which is still taking that drone concept and evolving and pushing the limits of what drone technology could do, which we're doing in delivery. So I'm thrilled to be in front of you to tell you a little bit about how we're approaching things, and be joined by my colleague Kelly, who is going to be educating me a lot about what we do on our truck side of the business. So Kelly, since you are the more senior folk from the company, do you want to talk about a little bit about what we'll be discussing today?
Sure. So I'll give a little background on Workhorse and where we started and where we stand today. I'll talk about the reason why we're moving to electric vehicles and why Workhorse chose this space to play in. A little bit about what's coming for EV and what incentives are available and what states are really trying to adopt some of the initiatives out there. I'll talk about the lineup of vehicles that we currently manufacture. And then, Randall, I'll head it back over to you to talk a little bit about aerospace.
Sounds fantastic.
So many of you understand Workhorse as a startup, but it turns out Workhorse has been in business for 120 plus years. And we actually operate out of the same space we started in back in the 1890s. That building was initially the factory for the Union City Body Company. And what we've done with our most recent leadership is revamp that facility into what it is today. It's being repainted, relit, and retooled to meet the needs of an EV workspace. So, you can see the little aerial photo down there of our property. Basically, that's 100 acres of land. So we have buildings dedicated to things like battery storage. We have our manufacturing floor. We have a brand new paint booth that's now up and running. We have a customer education center, which is where our technicians, both internally and from our dealer partners, can come in and train on site and get their hands on the trucks before they're delivered to their facility, along with a finished goods lot as well. We have a new test track that was just completed a few months back. And the nice thing about this facility is we have room to grow. So as our business expands, should we need to add additional buildings or facilities, we can do that. We also butt up against the railroad, so that we've got an opportunity there for transportation. So prior to what we're doing today, Workhorse actually made some hybrid electric trucks in the mid 2015s, and some of those vehicles are still on the road today. We have over 350 still in service with various package delivery companies across the country. You can go ahead to the next slide.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to state is that Workhorse operates out of 4 locations. We are largely, we have 2 locations in Ohio, our HQ, as well as our Aero business runs out of Mason, Ohio. And then, like Kelly's mentioning, in Indiana is where a lot of manufacturing happens, and then we have an office up in Michigan. And the drone side of the business really started happening in 2017 on this timeline. but has really, came into its current form more so in 2021, 2022. And I will progress on to the next slide. There you go.
Perfect. So part of our evolution from the Union City Body Company through many purchases, acquisitions, and rebranding that brought us right back to Workhorse was building out a team that could support our customers in the field. So just a quick snapshot of the regional sales team, and those red dots signify the dealer network that we currently have that I'll talk about here in a minute that are highlighted and kind of following some CARB initiatives. But really just want to talk about the alignment. Workhorse stands for teamwork, integrity, and accountability. And what we want to do is provide those things with our business partners so they can feel supported in the field. So Randall, now we'll talk about why cleaner, greener trucks.
There we go.
So the answer for the most part is climate change and the regulations aimed at addressing them. The climate story that broke yesterday, as you can see on the screen, shows that 2023 was one of the warmest years on record. And this potentially is a direct result of greenhouse gas emissions. And there's a little animation here. So if you want to go ahead and click again, we should have, there we go. So globally on the road, transportation is responsible for about 20% of greenhouse gases. Medium and heavy duty vehicles are responsible for a disproportionate amount of those emissions relative to their overall numbers on the road. So this is one of those driving factors that has increased regulations around trucks. Give her another click there.
I'm going to give you all of those.
So standards have been, perfect. Standards have been on the rise since the 70s. Most significantly is the 2010 EPA mandated reduction in diesel emissions. This is basically focused around making the things that come out of the engine safer for the environment and cleaner. And it was a little painful for fleet operators, but it was successful. And it showed that the government and the private sector could work well together to solve a problem. In 2015, we entered the Paris Greenhouse Gas Accords, and that aims to cap the temperate increases resulting from carbon emissions. So part of those accords, the US committed to a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas. And that was from 2005 levels to be completed by 2030. And that's driving a lot of the federal and state policies. So at the state level, various policy models, I think the one most people have heard of is probably the California Air Resource Board, which we call them CARB for short. They're having the most influence on the US, and there are 17 states or kind of hot markets that are aiming to adopt the CARB's Advanced Clean Truck Rule, which mandates that manufacturers have to sell a required percentage of zero emission trucks. And that kind of controls the supply side of the equation. The other piece of it is the demand side. So there's CARB's Advanced Clean Fleet, which requires those fleets to have a certain number of zero emissions vehicles each year. For now, that's California only. We're seeing some people that are kind of eyeballing the state. Where are we going from here? Do we follow CARB? Do we create our own path? So it'll be interesting to see how things lay out as we get farther into these initiatives. And of course, other regulations addressing testing and inspection and other things like that.
So Kelly, can I ask you?
At the federal level,
sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question really quick because we are approaching an election year, and it seems like the idea of climate change and clean energy, it becomes very polarizing for people based off of their political leanings. I'm wondering if you, from your perspective, that this transition into cleaner vehicles is going to happen, regardless of people's belief or sign off on what carbon emissions do, if it's going to happen, and if what you can expect out of a clean energy vehicle or electric vehicle as far as power, as far as utility, to where what are the give and takes from when you move from a fuel powered or a diesel powered vehicle into a clean energy vehicle. Since you worked at Mac, you probably have that's a stark realization when you go from those two worlds.
Sure, and I actually have a slide that addresses that, but I'll go ahead and give you a little overview. So we're looking at 40% less components on an EV. So you're talking less downtime, less things that can break, less things that have to be fixed, less parts that have to be on hand when these vehicles need maintenance. So we'll call that more uptime, which means they're on the road more. You're also looking at, the cost of fuel continues to rise while we have the ability in some cases to temper the cost of electricity. So how those two things combined can help lower the total cost of ownership. And then you can factor in things like tax credits and incentives that drive that initial purchase price down. So your longevity and your total cost of ownership becomes more positive, and getting rid of some of those things that we've had to deal with the ICE engines. But if you want to go, Randall, straight to the next slide, I actually talk about some of those incentives
Go ahead.
that are available. So Workhorse as a company does now qualify for a $40,000 tax credit, which is available to a multitude of manufacturers in the same space, but it allows you to apply after the fact, and we can help you guys out. We actually have some members on our staff that are very versed in what's happening and stay up to date with how to obtain incentives and how to apply them to the cost of the truck. So certain states also offer incentive dollars on the front end. So you could get anywhere from $60,000 to $120,000 off the purchase price. And what we've got on the screen here is an example for New York. So if you take your old legacy ICE vehicle that's probably 10, 15 years old at this point, and you return it, basically you can take $100,000 to $125,000 off the purchase price of a Workhorse or a zero emission vehicle that also costs you less to operate. So you no longer have diesel expenses, you have less turnover on your braking and other systems that involve in your day-to-day work. They also can be better for the drivers. You're talking less noise on their while they're driving in the car, their comfort, the ability to add technology into the vehicle with auxiliary batteries. So lots of exciting things that we can do in this space. And then also, on the flip side, with those 17 states that are really focused on CARB, you've got other states that maybe aren't as focused on following CARB, but also are still offering incentives, like oil-friendly states like Texas. You can get sizable incentives there, specifically in Austin. And then utility companies are also offering incentives and rebates for charging infrastructure. So you're able to kind of dip on both sides of the house, prepare your infrastructure, your installation, your charging station for those EVs that you can also get incentives for. So a lot of money out there to be spent in the migration from ICE to EV. And you can go to the next one. So I specifically want to talk about why Workhorse chose to focus on medium duty. So what you're seeing on the screen here is data from, it's a new ACT Research data pool. And what they did was they calculated the total cost of ownership and payback metrics for battery electric powertrains through 2040 for 23 North American applications. So the analysis factors and then incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act in the earlier years, as well as the increasing cost of ICE vehicles in latter years due to emission technology requirements, means payback is different depending on the different space you play in. So you'll see three colors. You see red, you see yellow, you see green. Red basically means the payback period is going to be longer than the useful life of that truck, which at this point doesn't make a ton of sense to move forward in that space. Yellow means payback is probably within the vehicle's lifespan, so it could make sense, but there's going to be a longer adoption cycle, so we're going to be slower to getting to green there. But the green space means that payback falls into these acceptable ranges. So that can also mean the darker the green, the more price parity you're going to get with your ICE vehicles. So that results in payback as either the same or costing less than an ICE vehicle over the term of the vehicle in service. If you'll click one more time, Randall. I blew up the class 4 and 5. Okay, thanks. I blew up class 4 and 5 so you could see specifically the space in which Workhorse plays. So battery electric work trucks are a good space because they're low in daily mileage requirements, which means they have a smaller battery pack and keeps the cost of the truck down. typically single shift return to base duty cycles, which means affordable level 2 charging works. They can charge overnight and be ready to go the next day. They can also go out on multiple routes before returning to charge. So you have some area to play there. You don't have to have that mindset of I have to hurry up and get back to base, because you have plenty of range with Workhorse trucks specifically. And at the end of the day, you know, that's what we're all here for. We're here to help our business partners maintain their business without interruption. So that uptime I talked about earlier, being able to complete their job, whether that's picking up linens or delivering packages. We don't want people worried about this range anxiety. These trucks are perfect to fit in that sweet spot of 80 to 120 miles a day that we can fully do on single charge, pardon me.
From an outsider's,
yeah.
Real quick, from an outsider's perspective, I don't know necessarily the difference between parcel delivery and last mile delivery. What are we delineating there? How are those different users?
So they can be one and the same. If we'll take, for example, UPS, they have Class 8 trucks that are delivering all over the country. They have down to smaller, medium duty size trucks that are just driving a route. So they pick up their packages at 3 or 4 a.m. from a depot. They run their route during the day, delivering to homes and businesses, and return to that depot at night. So that's a last mile delivery. Package delivery could be anything from that long over the road down to that final mile.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Did you want the next slide, or did you want this as well? This tidbit of data.
Go ahead to the next slide. Yeah,
okay,
just
perfect.
A little FYI, the class 4 through 6 routes are less than 100 miles, and that's kind of the sweet spot for our charge. So.
Gotcha.
So specifically about our Workhorse trucks, we have our flagship truck there on the left, which is our W56. It can be a class 5 or class 6 strip chassis or step van. In the middle there, you've got our W750 step van, which is class 4. And then on the far right is our cab and chassis, which is a W4CC. And the exciting thing about that cab and chassis is, while the 2 step vans are really targeted on that final mile delivery, that cab and chassis can be a multitude of things, whether it's a box truck or a reefer unit or a utility body. And there's some versatility there that helps get outside of just that final mile delivery piece, which is exciting for our dealer network because they can go after different vocations when trying to sell our trucks. And Randall already went over where we're located, so I'll skip that part of the slide.
Oh, yeah.
So here I just wanted to highlight a couple of use cases that we've done. We have our W56 in a couple of demos right now. And this one I wanted to highlight is making a relatively large amount of stops within an 8-hour period. They're traveling about 80 miles in the day, like we talked about earlier. They actually go up in weight as they're out and about, instead of going out heavy and coming back light, they're flipped. But the exciting thing about this demo is what we saw with our regen. That's the 35 kilowatt hours of energy going from the braking system back into the battery. And the other thing about it is having a state of charge return at over 50% is enough to do that same route again the next day without having to charge. If you'll click it again, I think, yep. Yeah. So the W750 went out with a Department of Sanitation to collect waste off street corners, standard trash cans. And the exciting part about this one was, while it was different from the last one, we still saw an acceptable range. We saw a very acceptable return state of charge. And also the driver really appreciated the vehicle, as well as it had adequate cargo space to get the drive completed. And then finally, the W4CC right there, you can see with a utility body on it. And the exciting piece about this demo is this truck made its way up the Grapevine in California. So over 191 miles driven, a single stop for only an hour to charge. The customer and our dealer were both very impressed with its performance. And I would be willing to bet that some of you caught the video on social media. I think I got one more, Randall.
Yes, ma'am.
There we go. So finally, I just want to recognize our proprietary telematics system. So we call Workhorse Connect. And basically, this allows fleet managers to track vehicles live, check historical data along with the vehicle's current statistics. Fleet managers can customize their dashboard to view various KPIs that are relevant to their business. Right now, we have about 2,500 data points, or excuse me, 2,500 variables that are tracked, 150 data points that are relayed back every 10 seconds. So we're pretty up to date. It really, we can view now the eGen trucks that we launched in 2015. They're still using the Metron software. So you can see even those trucks that have been in the field for 7, 8, 9 years at this point. We're able to collect data on those trucks that way, which is how we're able to boast 9.5+ million miles in the EV space. So, and then our latest update is with the launch of the W56, we were able to add over-the-air updates. And as we continue to evolve this software, we'll develop and deploy additional features, largely based on customer feedback as we get more of these trucks in the field. So that's our spiel on Workhorse commercial vehicles. Randall, thank you so much for letting me participate.
Of course. Well, now let's talk about how we transitioned that concept of electric vehicles into having a drone division within Workhorse. Because we were looking so much at package delivery and last mile delivery, that we figured that there was a way to increase the efficiencies of those delivery routes by adding drone technology. So currently, Workhorse holds a number of patents on truck-mounted drone systems in which you load from the bottom, as you can see in this photo. And that package, basically, if you have 5 packages to deliver over here and 1 to deliver over here, the drone could physically, or not even, I would say theoretically, because this is not in practice, but we can do it. It could deliver that package, come back and land and take another package. Now, in the United States, we have the FAA that governs everything that goes on within the national airspace. And so right now, launching from a moving vehicle, landing on a moving vehicle is very challenging by way of regulation. So this is not technology that is being deployed now, but the concept still is there and still is, I would believe, part of the future of what we'll see with last mile delivery. There's just a significant number of efficiencies that are created. So that's why drones were first introduced into the Workhorse family. So when we think about things like rivers, where you have a bridge and then 15 miles later you have another bridge, if you have to deliver something literally just on the other side, drones can resolve that problem quite easily, quickly, with reduced cost to the driver and the wear and tear on the vehicle. It's the same with roads that are not conducive for delivering packages, rural areas, long driveways, mountainous regions. You could use drones for a lot of these things to deliver packages or supplies as necessary. So we find these use cases not only in the United States, but we find them around the world, especially when you have areas that have poor infrastructure, road conditions, etc. And then traffic I have on here because obviously if a truck gets stuck, packages get delivered slower. But when we talk about the regulatory environment, flying over very congested areas is also quite challenging. So this is more future facing when we can talk about reducing the number of vehicles on the road because we're delivering more packages with drones as we decouple the drone from the truck at Workhorse a bit. This is just to say that the regulatory environments are changing. We built a technology for package delivery that is restricted or somewhat it's lagging because of the regulatory environment. And to the regulatory bodies, in fairness, they're just trying to make sure that the airspace is safe and that the technology is safe to do these sorts of deliveries as they're flying over residential areas or non-participators to deliver these packages. We in the drone industry, we have beyond visual line of sight is one of the most important next steps for drone use to become more widely adopted. When you fly beyond visual line of sight, it's literally you cannot no longer see the drone from where you're operating. This could lead to fully autonomous flights, flights that are done by a command center inside of a building, and they're deploying drone after drone to do deliveries. This technology is available today, but the regulatory environment makes it so that visual line of sight is the preferred or the most attainable way to do anything with drones. So we're finding ways in which we could use this technology for proof of concepts, like delivering packages from a ship to a shore or an offshore oil rig, where instead of someone docking the boat, climbing up a ladder, putting someone in harm's way to deliver, documents or a spare part, you could do that from a drone. Or maybe like a hospital to transfer medicines and things like that. You could do that from rooftops, line of sight. And so these are ways that we're trying to kind of kickstart the use of this kind of technology before the FAA and other regulatory bodies really get to the level of comfort and the documentation that's necessary to make this kind of a scalable situation. But right now we are impacted greatly as a delivery drone company by the regulatory environment. Now, Workhorse is proudly working with UPS Flight Forward. This is something that has been going on for a number of years, and we only started talking about recently. But UPS is obviously one of the largest parcel companies, last mile delivery companies in the United States and abroad. But we feel like we have the aerospace expertise and the willingness to partner and the willingness to go through some of these challenging regulatory environments to work with a partner like UPS. So we're currently in a process called the 44807 to get enough flight hours and basically a repeated use case to show the safety and reliability of our technology. We're pretty far down that road to where this could be scaled up as the certification is done and the regulatory environment matures. One thing that you can see here is that when they load the package onto the drone takes off and deploys it or lands it using a winch system, which we utilize. It basically goes 30 feet above the ground and then drops it down slowly and gently. But not everyone has a backyard or even enough space to deliver these packages. So one thing to keep in mind when it comes to drone delivery is there's a whole wide network of infrastructure that could or should exist to make this a feasibility over the long term. One of the partners that we work with for this purpose is Valkyrie. They're a Chicago-based company that makes this landing dock. So you can see our Horsefly drone landing a package on top of this landing pad. This makes it so that if there's dogs, kids, people in the way, that they're not going to be impacted, or there's no chance of it kind of falling or being delivered on them, which we have other fail safes for that. But it lands it on a secured place, and then it puts it in the middle and ingests it into this locker system. Now, if you can imagine that you're at a college campus or apartment complex or business area, that they have these lockers for individuals, so that you would go up to the tablet, put in your code, and be able to get your package. That makes it so that you're securing the package and also that it's delivered more safely. But you could also imagine the future where these lockers are cooled or heated. They could have things that are already preset in all of them, like AEDs or EpiPens, so that when you have this infrastructure throughout neighborhoods, that there could be life-saving supplies that also go along with it that could make better communities. And I think that that's where the push for drone technology is not only to create efficiencies and costs, but also to make this smart city dream come true, to where you're actually impacting results of the community, whether it's the health and wellness or emergency response, things like that. So drone technology, our drone technology at Workhorse, collaborates with Valkyrie to do this sort of thing, to get ready for the infrastructure that's needed in the future, because we just make the drone end of it, not necessarily everything else that might be working within the system. So we have two airframes that we manufacture at Workhorse. One is called the Horsefly. This is more the traditional package delivery drone. Like you've seen the delivery with the winch, it drops it down from 30 feet safely. And we basically test all of our stuff to carry a 10-mile round trip. So, and with the Horsefly, it's up to 6 pounds. So we can cover quite a bit of delivery instances. It's not going to be for all packages, whether size or weight, but it is something that we feel like this could be a great first step or next step for drone delivery. So you could think about the traditional delivery companies like UPS that could be using this, but you could also be delivering lab samples, medical supplies, blood, or even components. You put them in a box and you deliver them from one end of a big metro complex to the other, one side of a big factory to with the other. So there's a lots of that transportation thing that can be happening autonomously without a person in the loop, repeated all day long. So it really just depends on the user and what kind of use cases that you would see that as beneficial for. On the top of this unit, there's a parachute system. That's one of the many redundancies that we put in place to show the repeatability, reliability, and safety of our drones. So there's that redundancy for the purpose of when you're flying over congested areas or whatever, that we have a way to land the drone down safely if there were a problem. Now, John Graver, who is my boss, the president of the Aero business, often mentions that we have fleet units that are out in the world, whether with UPS or with Valkyrie, and they have hundreds of flights without issues. We're very proud of the reliability of the airframe we made. We made it not for the consumer, not for necessarily the most wide array of use cases. We made it for delivery, and sometimes that's as repeatable as point A to point B, but we know that we can do that time and time again, and we'll talk a little more about the reliability shortly. But we're basically covering the gambit of what the future of drone technology could look like. So it's manufactured in the United States. We're NDAA compliant, meaning we don't use any blacklisted components specifically out of China, so that your data stays with you, depending on how sensitive you are to cybersecurity concerns. The other airframe that we make is called the Falcon, or the WA-4200. We went through kind of a naming mechanism change, but this is for more like a humanitarian aid type purpose. It drops from a winch system, and it drops from a servo system instead of a winch. So instead of landing that package down on a line and then leaving it, it drops it from a controlled height. So we basically usually will go fly down to 5 feet, and then you're probably dropping it 2 or 3 feet. But this could be for, like I said, delivering medical supplies, delivering AEDs out to someone that requires it, that's in a hard to reach place, two-way radios, 24-hour kits, water bottle and some food to someone that's stranded. So there's a lot of things that just, if you can pick it up and you want to deliver it somewhere else, drones can get there faster, sometimes with more safety. And so again, it's about creating better results or better outcomes for the person on the other end or the individuals on the other end, not just the savings by using an electric vehicle versus driving, or the wear and tear on the vehicle, which are additional kind of side effects of using drone technology. Now, with this airframe, we are in the Green UAS certification process, which is a significant cyber security vetting, as well as looking at the componentry and where it's manufactured, so that it can be certified to be used in the long term by public safety officials, federal government types. But we're just trying to get ahead of the geopolitical swaying pendulum that exists around drone technology. So this is a very like red, white, and blue type situation with our drone technology, and we're proud of how much work has been put in to keep manufacturing here and kind of cultivate the U.S. domestic drone manufacturing capabilities. So we also have proprietary software that's being run on our drones. We call it Squadron. It used to be called Metron Air. So if you've heard that in the past, now that's moved over to a new name, which is Squadron. And basically, our software is built and designed for the purpose of package delivery. So not only is it going to have the mission planning features that you would assume, you have a map, you want to drop it on at a certain coordinate. All of that is possible with just putting in the location that you want to drop the package, and then it flies and does this mission entirely autonomously. So this is a cloud-based or a web-based application that you could use from a computer. But also it's meant for the delivery of things. So you can have scanning of a package or a barcode, so that you know that this thing is going to this place, status updates, all of those things that can be API'd from our flight app to whatever the ecosystem that the company is using. So we have built it so that it would work more seamlessly than just having a drone carry a thing and dropping it by itself. The purpose of our drone is to do those deliveries, and so there's a lot of features that are built in to suit or to benefit the drone delivery market. I mentioned repeatability, reliability, safety, all of that. This is us dropping boxes at the same location, and you can see that it's pretty accurate to get that repeated delivery. So these are things that maybe from the outside would not be seen as significant feats or challenges. Creating a winch system isn't easy, one that spools back up every time, one that releases the package every time and doesn't get stuck or jammed, because that could cause a whole bunch of other headaches. We feel like our repeatability and our confidence in deploying package delivery with our drones is sky high. We haven't been the most vocal or the most public company on our drone side. We've had conversations in the background, but not really been out and doing things like this where we welcome the world to see the things that we're up to. But if you are listening to this and you have an application in which you're considering how you can deliver something from point A to point B, we're looking for more interesting use cases. We're looking for partners that want to go through the process with us of finding how it would work it within the legalities and the regulations that exist. But we're willing to take on all of those challenges. So I would encourage anyone that is listening, if you're at the point where you're trying to discover the right hardware to use, we'd love to have that conversation. We feel very confident that we can do this in a repeated way, as long as our flight distance and the payload weight capabilities fit within what you're trying to accomplish. So that's my end of things. And Kelly, I appreciate you going into the truck stuff. So I think we can see what kind of questions have come up. And please, I encourage you to add more, because right now there is only one. So I will answer that one because it's drone related. But if you have other questions, I know that there are more people in here, and this is the time to give Kelly and I a run for our money to see what things we know or what kind of things we're thinking about. And also just there's our emails, Kelly's and my email. If you have questions that you want to take offline or want to reach out to us for any reason, feel free to do so. So the first question that is on here, and now we had another, but someone asked, what's the ETA on Green UAS approval and certification? So I just touched that we are going through the Green UAS process, and that we're seeing the first manufacturers of that process being approved. As far as the timeline goes, I think that we're still months away. The componentry is not necessarily the problem. I think we're at a point in which we just are in a queue for the cybersecurity vetting of the entire organization that's necessary for Green UAS certification. Now, to the person that asked the question, and I'm not asking you to follow up here, but I have been in the drone industry a while and was very closely linked to the Blue UAS program before AUVSI launched Green. I'd be interested to know what use cases are actually held back by us not being green. There just doesn't seem to be like a lot of early term requirements from federal government to be buying our delivery drones. So, I mean, once we get green, we're going to be happy that it's done, but I'd be interested to know just what is the driver of that question and why, what you think might be a possible with that. Kelly, there's a question on the truck side. Someone said, are the trucks HVIP eligible in California yet? If not, what's the timeline? You would likely know what HVIP is, but that's the question. What do you got?
I was fully prepared for that question, and the answer is I encourage you to log on to the earnings call next week for a better update.
Perfect. Well, we do have our earnings call on Tuesday as a publicly traded company. This is a quarterly activity. So if you are following Workhorse, if you are an investor, or just want to kind of get the very top level business line from Workhorse, Tuesday would be a great earnings call to join. So we'll leave it at that. Somebody asked about how our drones do with wind resistance. does that factor into your safety and compliance concerns? So yeah, we built an airframe in which does its job reliably. We didn't build an airframe that I think is going to be after the improvements we make is going to be one that can operate wind, sleet, snow, rain, hail, and all the environments that USPS and others claim that they continue to deliver in. So wind does present some challenges because of the way that it's built. We still do fly in wind. I wouldn't be the best person to quote the knots that we confidently operate, but wind is a challenge, and but we still do all of our deliveries and all of our testing with safety and in mind. So I could give you more details on what kind of are our limits on wind, but yeah, that's where we're at on that. Kelly, another question for you. Someone asked, what sets Workhorse's trucks apart from the Rivian trucks that are being used by Amazon today? And I think that how I see this from an outsider's perspective is when I started seeing the gas-powered trucks move to these electric-powered trucks that are operating in my neighborhood for Amazon, it definitely is an exciting first mover or early adopter in a big scale to see electric vehicles. So how could we at Workhorse fill that sort of gap as far as our trucks against the trucks that people might have seen from Amazon?
Sure. So the biggest difference is going to be the size. So our trucks are more of a medium heavy duty. Their trucks are more of a medium on the lighter duty side. So we have 2 to 3 times the payload that they have. Our batteries are a little larger, which gives us a longer range than those. And it really just comes down to application. You know, we can take the cab and chassis and make it a multitude of things, not just a step van. So we have, you know, the vocational aspect as well that we can go after with that chassis.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's two more drone questions that are up, and then there's a kind of a drone and truck question. So I'm going to tackle these drone ones first. Someone asked about what does the pilot have to go through drone related training to operate or maintain the load? And they said, does the driver need to go through drone related training? So I'm going to answer this question from both, whether it's the driver or the pilot. For someone that's operating a drone for any commercial benefit, if there is money being exchanged in any way, or you're representing a company by doing your drone flights, you do need to have what's called the Part 107 certification, which is a pretty simple test for someone to get, and there's not a practical component of it. So it's simply just airworthiness type stuff. Whether you understand weather patterns and airports and call signals to airports when you're planning your missions. That is required to operate commercial drones. We are also looking at Part 135, which is for package delivery with UPS Flight Forward and other governing things. But when we look at the driver of a drone, if this were to be an autonomous system that was operated by a package delivery company, I don't think that the pilot would be necessarily a licensed drone pilot. I think that there's a much deeper regulatory thing, the part of 135, that makes it so that your organization can do this kind of delivery. But I think that when we're looking at truck-mounted drone delivery in package delivery, we're quite a ways out. I think one concept that came to me recently that I think is really interesting is the idea of like a mobile pharmacy, where you're not necessarily moving in the vehicle. The vehicle has all the pharmaceuticals or whatever that you're trying to deliver. You park this vehicle after it's loaded up in an area that's lesser served, and then the drone basically is delivering all day like a remote bodega, but it doesn't move. So the truck stays in the same place, so you no longer have that conflict of landing and deploying from a moving vehicle. I think we could see that sort of thing before we see actual drivers driving down the road and the drones taking off and landing repeatedly. So hopefully that answered the question. And then somebody asked about our USDA scanning and what drone we're using. I'll just cover this briefly. Workhorse is in the business of doing package delivery, but we also just happen to be right place at the right time for working with some federal agencies on land scanning. We do have a drone ourselves that could potentially carry these payloads, but to integrate sensor payloads onto our aircraft would take engineering time, engineering resources, and it wouldn't necessarily be the most competitive from a selling standpoint for us to do that. But from a manufacturing standpoint, to where we can control what we're building for the purpose of scanning, it could be worthwhile. So right now we're using the a FreeFly Alta X, and we have integrated sensors onto that, or worked with what is already integrated on that for our current scanning with the federal government. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a truck specific question, and then we'll go to the kind of an interesting question that's for both. Okay, based on Kingsburg showing the demo W56 loaded with stuff, Reddit investors guessed that one of them is UniFirst. Were they right? I don't know how loaded that question is, but do you know anything about what I just said?
Oh, it's very loaded. I know what they're getting at. And the best I can do is to share, we have demoed with a couple of linen companies that you guys would recognize by name. We're not ready to go public with that yet, but we hope to share some good news in the very near future.
I apologize, Kelly, for being ignorant to the truck side of things, because if I saw that being related to proprietary stuff for me, it would be no problem. Here's another question that's kind of in that vein too. Somebody said they're looking forward to the call on Tuesday, but want to get an idea from on demand. Now, I will answer this from the drone side first by saying I am 80 days into my experience at Workhorse, and prior to my joining, I think that one of the challenges that Workhorse had was lead acquisition. It was challenged because there wasn't a lot of brand recognition within the drone space of what Workhorse was doing, even though the work was quality. And all of my colleagues that are here in Mason, where I'm at right now, have done exceptional work at creating a product that's reliable, safe, documentation, all of that. But the go-to-market plan was narrow. And it's narrow because sometimes you think it's easy, or sometimes you just don't know you don't have the identity to know the right questions to ask or the right people to approach. I can literally say that the demand for our technology has improved by the effort that we've placed to create demand, if that makes sense. So the question is, are we able to disclose anything from demand or sales? I mean, like, that's all business that's saved for an earnings call that's handled by the right body, an SEC ready body to disclose those things. However, I will say that we're making improvements. Things like what Kelly and I are doing right now are an improvement. We're educating the market of what we do, how we do it. We're being receptive to questions and giving direct answers. And there wasn't always a vehicle for that. And especially on the drone side, we should have been much more public as figures. And my goal and what I'm trying to achieve is exactly that. Currently, I walked away from our drone demo palooza day in our facility, which we have 8 manufacturers of drones, and we have around 150 people in our warehouse or in our factory right now, seeing our drones, talking about how drones can be used for their different use cases. And again, these are just the efforts we've recently made to try to create that community, be a part of the broader drone space, and acquire more customers. Kelly, what about from your end as far as what you're seeing with increasing demand or conversation around Workhorse trucks?
Sure. So I think, over the past year, Workhorse has worked to build out not only the dealer network, but the field sales team. So I think that was piece number one that was missing. We were working really hard on the engineering side and the vehicle design and the manufacturing. So could we have pulled that timeline in? Hindsight's 2020. Maybe had we started this a year ago, we might be in a little bit of a different place now. What I will say as far as demand goes is it's not that there's not demand. It's that this cycle for EVs is significantly longer than an ICE truck. And it's not just the customer education and the consultativeness of switching from one platform to a total different platform. You also have to think about the energy grid and charging infrastructure. Just because I have a truck ready to go today doesn't mean the charging company is ready to go, doesn't mean the site survey is done, doesn't mean the installation is done, doesn't mean the power grid can support the installation. So it's a lot more factors other than just driving down the dealership, grabbing a truck and hitting the road. So I think that has been quite a learning curve, not only for myself, for all of Workhorse, since largely we came from automotive and truck sales on the ICE side. But the customers are receptive to the information. We're having good conversations. This is not a sell like a traditional sell. This is like an educational process. You've got to learn the components of the vehicle, learn how to use it, teach your drivers how to operate it, learn how to charge it, factoring in there some human error because we're not perfect. So if someone forgets to plug the truck in, it can't go tomorrow, or it can't go the third day, or whatever the situation is. So there's an escalation factor that is not like nothing we've ever seen before. So I'm excited now that we've been in like the sales space legitimately for a year and some change now, to see what happens over the rest of Q4, Q1, Q2 of next year. I think is really going to become a sweet spot where we can start promoting some more deliveries, if you will.
Yeah, and I think that we probably share a challenge in which you can't assume who's looking into these things today. There are going to be those organizations that are switching their fleets from gas powered to electric vehicles, but unless they raise their hand or unless they come and find you, it's hard to time those introductions or those times that we meet those people in which we're in front of them when they're ready to make that switch. With drone delivery, I'm sure that there's plenty of hospitals or plenty of big box stores, CVS's or Home Depots, et cetera, that are looking to do delivery at some point. But you have to get in front of the right person. You have to they have to be ready, or the ones that are looking for it. And so there is this long educational cycle where, sure, the people that we're interacting with now, they know who we are and they'll contact us when they're ready. But the ones that we're not talking to, there's tons of them that are out there looking to change over their fleets to electric today, or those that are looking to change over to drone to explore drone delivery today. We just have to be the ones that they see. And from the drone specific standpoint, we just haven't been the best at getting to be the ones that they think of when they haven't met us before. So we're trying to make improvements through digital search and those sorts of efforts on a marketing standpoint, which usually marketing is not seen as like an overtly crucial thing to sales. Salespeople often think it's just going to take me in my relationship building skills, but the marketing within Workhorse is very necessary to get to the point where we have a lot of inbound traffic of people that are ready today. So it shortens that education and that sales cycle. Okay, so there's one more question. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that, Kelly. There's one more question. It's related to drones. If anyone has anything else, if you want to throw it out, we'll be happy to answer. I hope that you feel like this is a environment that we're willing to be as transparent and thorough as possible. But the last question that's on here is there technology built in to resist magnetic interference and improve accuracy around things like power lines? So I'm assuming that's talking about drones. Magnetic interference for sensor drones that are going up and inspecting power lines and culverts and bridges and things where there's electromagnetic interference, often causing issues for drones. We're not doing that. When we're delivering packages, we're also not delivering extremely close to power lines. So I wouldn't say we have significant issues there. We haven't gone through an extensive process of hardening our GPS or making it so that there couldn't be these sorts of impacts, but we feel like we're at the standard level of the industry for resisting electromagnetic interference. I hope that that's a good enough answer. If we found that the use cases that we're working with are highly demanding to doing something with protecting GPS and protecting from EMI, then we would do that. But it just hasn't been something in our use cases that we run into very frequently. Cool. Appreciate that, Joe. That's all we have, unless more questions come. An hour goes by quickly, and I want to say thank you to Kelly for taking a jump in this whole webinar world with me to try to tell you kind of both sides of our business. I know that it maybe wasn't like fully woven together, but that's because we both have our days we're doing our work that we're doing every day, and we wanted to share that holistically, but we don't always run into each other. Kelly, anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, just thanks for having me. And I think education is probably the point on both sides of the house where we're just in total full ramp up right now. So I encourage participants to reach out. We'll do our best to answer questions as much as I can. And also, like, if you know people or you want to share this webinar, I believe, Randall, it's going to be recorded for later use. So if somebody couldn't make it, feel free.
Correct. Yeah. So basically, how that's all going to work is that if after this you're like, I want to watch that again, by all means, watch it 5 times over the next 24 hours. But you'll just click your registration link, or once it closes, you'll get an email about it. Now, we will host this up on the Workhorse YouTube within the next 24 hours, let's say, once the video gets processed, and then I can get it to the marketing team that does that. But please share it. We are eager to talk to anybody trying to solve these problems. And I think what I've learned about Workhorse in my short time here is that partnership, the idea of collaboration with other organizations or with our customers, is very high. It's not like we have a commodity that we're saying, here, figure out how to use this thing, and then we leave you to it. We are trying to dive in with our partners to solve the problems that they have or the concerns that they have, to educate their organization so that they can move forward either on trucks, electrification of their trucks, or drone delivery. So please, if you know someone that's thinking about it, send them our way. If you are looking to go into this, shoot an email to one of us right now, because we want to start having these conversations. They make it so that the work that we're putting in has meaning and payoff to it. And we owe that to our shareholders. We owe that to our colleagues, and we owe that to the world, that we are able to get our technology that we've busted our butts on to actually start making the changes that we expect. So without anything else, I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for all the kind words to those that have been saying that they appreciate this information. We hope to do it again soon. Kelly, thank you again, and we'll talk again.
Thanks.
See you.